You're listening to episode 24 of the Thoughtful Software Podcast. Today, we are catching up with our friend Ravi, the creator of the revolutionary app TaskHuman. Andrew, Fahad, and Ravi are talking about online marketplaces, how we can effectively serve people by creating new types of marketplaces, and change the way we search for information. Ready to dive in? Here's Ravi, Fahad, and Andrew. Hello and welcome to the Thoughtful Software Podcast. We believe thoughtful people and thoughtful software will change the world for the better. This podcast is all about diving into new technology and discussing industry trends, but more importantly, we are passionate about helping people be better at what they do. This is the focus of what we call thoughtful software.
So let's get started. Maybe Ravi, I think we always get started with just an intro. Tell us about yourself and tell us about TaskHuman.
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for the opportunity to be on your podcast. Really excited to be here. And thank you, Jessica, for making all this happen. So a little bit about me. I'm a 20-year tech guy. Started off my career at Ericsson back in the 90s. I was a programmer for a lot of the cell phone UI piece. Back then it was just a dot matrix display, so it wasn't terribly complicated. But nevertheless, it's really exciting to be a part of that and the cell phone revolution, mobile revolution in general. And from there, I moved on to a few companies. I joined a company called Motorola, which later, spun off one of their divisions into a division called Freescale, which is a $6 billion semiconductor division. And so spent 10 years overall with Motorola/Freescale. In a variety of roles. So did program management, product marketing, segment marketing, moved to Germany for 4 years, ran the European automotive microcontroller business for them. It's a pretty large P&L, $300 million revenue. Did pretty well. We actually doubled it in a few years with a ton of design wins. And then, that went on to become chief of staff of the global sales and marketing team. So now I was helping run a 1,000-person sales team, 400 marketers, $6 billion in revenue. So a ton of excitement. Freescale got acquired by private equity at that time. So it was the largest LBO, leveraged buyout, as they call it, in tech history. And that was $18 billion. So it was a ton of fun just kind of watching, how a company gets acquired and private equity guys start to create value, for their investors. And so a year into that, I moved back to the US and then switched roles to doing corporate development. So ran an alliances group for Freescale, so managing all of the ecosystem of hardware, software, systems vendors. Ton of fun. Then went to the Bay Area, or came to the Bay Area, I would say, which is where I'm based now. Joined SanDisk, so joined SanDisk in corporate strategy. And then I had this idea to push SanDisk in a new direction. And ended up creating a business unit from scratch, and left as VP and GM of that business unit, which did pretty well. So that's sort of my background in big companies. And what happened when SanDisk then got acquired by Western Digital is that when that acquisition happened, I just felt that it was time for me to move on and maybe do a startup. And so did a startup in LA based around computer vision, run by a really awesome friend of mine, David Carter, called Wiser. And so helped them grow their business all the way to raising their rounds and doing a lot of awesome work in computer vision. And then I just had this kind of lingering feeling in my mind that TaskHuman, and we'll talk a lot about that, was just due. It was just the right time to do it. And so I ended up leaving Wiser in good shape. We're still good friends. I'm also an investor in Wiser with the CEO. And so essentially started TaskHuman in September 2017. So as a summary, really a tech guy. I've run pretty much every function from program management, product marketing, segment marketing, strategy, sales ops, all that stuff, to now putting it all together and bringing this new passion of mine to life called TaskHuman. So that's the short and long of it.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So what compelled a semiconductor guy and tech guy to start a people platform like TaskHuman? So maybe you can describe TaskHuman a bit, and then how you came up with this idea.
Yeah, TaskHuman is the world's first wellness network. All of us know the medical network, right? Many of us, not all of us, but many of us have an insurance card. And with that insurance card, you kind of take your card to any doctor in the network. And so once you pay insurance, you're kind of set to be able to talk to any doctor in the network. I really had a ton of passion for doing something in the medical network space. But then as I thought more about it, I really felt that the best contribution that we could make is really creating a preventive healthcare network, the kind that doesn't exist today, the kind that you really need. And so the more we thought about it, the more I felt like there was nothing there of satisfactory importance. And so we said, why don't we take some of the best of the medical network and then completely create the opposite of the worst of the medical network. I mean, learn from all those mistakes and then create this really unique wellness network where the more time you spend on it, on preventive healthcare, the better it is for you. And that really prolongs or delays the need for entry into the medical system. And so that's the thought process behind TaskHuman. So TaskHuman is now the world's first wellness network where with just your mobile phone, a couple of taps, you can search for hundreds of topics, but with a couple of taps, you're going to be talking live. That's really right. You're going to be talking live via video call to hundreds and hundreds of experts on hundreds and hundreds of wellness topics. So imagine you want to do yoga. You've never done it. You want to pick it up. You just tap a button, you're going to get a yoga provider. Same tap of a button, you're going to get a Pilates instructor. You're going to get a high intensity interval training instructor. You want nutrition for your pet, or your pet is acting up, whether it's a dog or a cat. You want some help, you're going to get that. If you have mental health, needs, you're really stressed out about work. How would you like to just tap a button and talk to a professional, a counselor in that area that can help you think about this? So think about all the things that where you're not really needing a doctor, but you need a professional to help you, with those areas. And so that's what we call preventive wellness. By the time you're sick, you need a doctor, right? But there's a lot of stuff where you need the help of a professional, but you don't necessarily need a doctor. And that's really what the wellness network that we've built is. And so TaskHuman, to summarize, is the world's first wellness network where on your mobile phone with the tap of a button, you can get live one-on-one video call access to host hundreds and hundreds of experts in hundreds and hundreds of wellness topics.
That's awesome. So obviously there's a lot here, but one of the chief things when I look at platforms like this, obviously preventative health is huge. It's just going to get bigger. It's a monstrous opportunity to go after. But there are chief problems with this. I've been going to the same doctor for 20 years. The guy knows my health. I trust him. He's a great dude. We lift weights. Sometimes he's just a solid guy. The trust I've built with him allows him to tell me things that other doctors simply won't to offend me. And it's the same thing with services, right? Where Skipless is a service business. And we need to be able to pair people that are going to be successful with their customers, right? People have different personalities. Some people are more passive, some people are more aggressive, some people are even passive aggressive. How do you make sure that when I'm getting paired with another individual that we have rapport, right? We have similarities, that I can trust that person with my wellness information? That's some of the most secure and secret information, private information on the planet.
Yeah, great question. So we have a very unique model where we're the first platform where you can come in and type what you're feeling, and we translate that into a provider that we think we can help. And so let me explain that. So in our platform, you're not searching for necessarily, a yoga provider. You can come in and say, I just want to relax, or I want to feel good, or I want to meditate. So we have a natural language engine where you can say things like, I can lose weight. And then the engine knows that that's represented by a certain number of professionals. And so if you want to lose weight, as an example, you can come in and type that, and then, we'll connect you to a dietitian, nutritionist, people who can help with meal prep, strength and conditioning, personal trainers. All these range of people can help you. And so we don't necessarily make the final connection final. There are a lot of platforms where you get the choice of somebody, and it's only one person that you can be connected with. And if you want to switch, maybe it's 2 or 3, and then after which you have to really pay money to switch to the 4th person. So we really created a unique business model where, think of it like the Bachelor show, right? Or the Bachelorette, if you guys watch ABC, they're really 30 or whatever odd people that come in. But you still have to, the person who's dating still has to spend the time and get to know them, and then pick one at the end, right? At the end of the show, they get married to or make a proposal to one person. So that's the way we look at it. Our job isn't to definitively connect you with that one person who's going to help. We give you free 7 minutes with literally everybody on the network. And so, we have hundreds of providers. If you want, you can actually talk to hundreds of providers and find the right fit. And so we do the work to line up 90% of the hard work done by the platform through our natural language search engine. So when you come in and type, I'm stressed out, or I want to lose weight, or I have back pain and need some rehab exercises. So that's sort of your entry point. We take that and then we connect you to a set of people who can help. But you still have to spend the 7 minutes to get to know somebody, to build that rapport, because the person that we connect first may not be the right person for you. Maybe you're pissed off at them, or I don't know, maybe you don't like what they have to say, whatever it is, right? Maybe you just didn't connect with them. And so that final connection, that last 10% is really up to you, but the engine is built to do the bulk of the 90% of the work.
Cool. Follow-on question to that is, a lot of these networks, especially when it comes to high skill positions, and we'll count wellness as a high skill position in general, they have a problem of curating talent, meaning they let everyone onto their platform, or they let too few people on their platform. How are you managing that? How are you making sure that when I talk to a physician about rehab exercise, I'm getting someone that's terrific and not some rando that may or may not be certified to give me advice? I'm thinking, we talk about like programming networks all the time and freelance platforms. People saying they're Uber, but for software development. And it's kind of a joke, like anyone can almost drive a car as long as they're physically able, but not everyone can program, not everyone can be a physician. So, what are your thoughts on that? How are you guys making sure you have high quality people when I do get matched?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. As a cautionary term, we definitely don't have physicians or doctors on the platform, right? That's just not what we are. There are other companies that are doing doctors, specifically doctors alone. Many insurance companies have apps that connect their network of doctors to consumers via video call. So that's definitely a space we're not in. But to use that same example to say, okay, if you want to lift weights with somebody, or you want to just learn about lifting weights, that's really not a physician, right? This is not what they're trained in. But there are others, strength and conditioning coaches, namely personal trainers, that all have various certifications, whether it's the National Strength and Conditioning Association, or there are a range of certifications that help you get into this field. So those are the people that we have. So as a summary, we really look for 3 things when we interview providers. So we're definitely in the spectrum of, we curate our providers, and so rando, as you called it, Mr. Rando can join the platform by just creating a bogus profile. We definitely have a very selective process, so we're not so restrictive as to only have like 1 or 2 providers, but at the same time, we're not, we don't accept everybody that comes in. So our acceptance rate is roughly about 10%, because we do take the time to curate and make sure that they're really good at these following things. So what we check for as a baseline, as you said, certifications. Are you certified practitioner in your field? There's tons of organizations that certify various people in various areas in the broad category of wellness. And so we check for relevant certifications in that field. So that's check number 1. Check number 2, are they a practicing professional, or are they just starting off? At the moment, we don't hire newbies. So we actually only hire people that have existing clients. And so the 3rd thing then becomes, are you able to communicate well? And are you really a professional, as in you want to do this for a living? Then the 4th one becomes, are you able to communicate through the video platform? Because you're probably not going to meet the person, the consumer, the client live anytime soon. The entire conversation, the activity happens on the platform via video call. And so we look out for communication. Over the last 6 months, we've actually implemented a peer review policy where if you're applying as a yoga trainer, you have to pass peer review by interviewing with one of our existing providers that is already in the platform. And so these are just some of the many things that we're doing, but this hopefully gives you and your audience the confidence that we take our job as a platform seriously. We don't want randos to be connected to you. We only put awesome people in front of you. But beyond that, it's still your job as a consumer and really your prerogative as a consumer to choose the right people. So you're never going to be stuck with just one person in a category. You can always talk to free 7-minute call, talk to a range of providers before you decide to settle on one or a few.
Cool.
Let me back up just a second before we go too far into the products itself. I wanted to more talk about, like you've described TaskHuman as a network. We've mentioned that it's a platform. There's also like marketplaces. I guess this is for you too, Andrew. Like, what's the difference between all of them? You have like service marketplaces like Uber and B&B. You have product marketplaces. You have maker platforms like YouTube and Instagram. You have exchange platforms. Let's talk about that. Like, where would you see TaskHuman fall under?
For me, a platform is just a place. It's like a mall where producers and consumers gather together and find each other. Right? That's really the highest definition of a platform. Marketplace is a kind of a platform where there's buying and selling that's happening. And we all have this image of a marketplace, right? It's the grocery markets that we've all been to, where there are buyers hawking their sellers hawking their goods, right? Whatever vegetable, various other items, and then buyers kind of browsing all these different things and then deciding what to buy, right? I mean, I think most of us can relate to that. And so platform at a highest level is just, something that brings people together, producers and consumers. A marketplace is a kind of a platform. We are a marketplace, TaskHuman's a marketplace. But before I get into that, there's really two kinds of platforms, maker and exchange, right? And so maker platforms are where the content is produced by the producer on the platform. And so you mentioned Fahad, YouTube. That's because without the content that you upload, there's really no need for a consumer to come into YouTube. And so, that's why it's a maker platform. Same thing with Instagram. Your photo or your video that you post up there is the content that people come to consume. And so those are all maker platforms because they're driven, by the maker, and then the consumer of that, comes in and,
It's like one-to-many transaction. You can scale that platform much easier than an exchange, right?
Right. I think both of those, in my view, have different kinds of challenges in scaling. It's not one is easier or the other, but certainly, they have different challenges. And then the exchange platforms like Airbnb, right, or eBay, or even TaskHuman for that matter. There's the exchange of information. In the case of TaskHuman, is really what happens on TaskHuman, because we've lined up a bunch of people that are providers. Consumers come and find the providers, and what's really happening, the transaction is really that exchange of knowledge, if you will. Very similar to potentially Airbnb and many other exchange, eBay and exchange platforms, where it's a product that gets exchanged. And so we're kind of fit into that exchange platform. I think over time we're going to be creating a lot of content as well. So we're going to be straddling the two areas of maker and exchange as we evolve in our company. If you look at us 20 years from now, I have no doubt that we'll be both an exchange and a maker platform.
I'm going to back up exactly what he's saying. I think when I think of platform, I think of something you can build on, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be content. It can be Facebook games is a perfect example of a platform where people created games on top of it. Zynga being the famous game developer on that one. And then a marketplace allows people to offer services they couldn't, or goods. So like Etsy, for example, before it was very hard to sell homemade goods to other people. You could obviously go to a flea market or something, but online, unless you are on eBay, it was very difficult. So Etsy made it easy. Airbnb lets you sell your rooms, and there's usually a value add on top of on both of them, right? So it's important to look at the value add. What does Facebook add? Well, they have billions of users. So when you build your game, that's your audience now. Etsy, They can take payment for you. They can make shipping easy. They can do all kinds of things for something like TaskHuman. The algorithms and the back end systems allow easier and discoverability of services that you need that you otherwise wouldn't have had. I think he was spot on. So I don't really need to add any more to it.
Well, you have providers and then you have the users, right? So both sides you need to scale at the same time or find this balance where, if I come to Airbnb or TaskHuman, that I have, an Airbnb, there's rooms available, or TaskHuman, there are providers available. I mean, that's probably a big challenge for you. How do you plan on like scaling both sides and, maybe taking some, what you've learned from how Uber and Airbnb scaled?
I want to answer that real fast. I don't think it's that big of a problem. When I look at let's look at development, for example. There's a huge shortage of development, but people are quickly solving the problem because there's a lot of money in it to solve it. And if you extrapolate, when Uber and Lyft, like, were there this many taxi drivers before? Absolutely not. But people found an opportunity to make money, and so they became taxi drivers so that they could utilize their free time. I think that the same thing would happen, right? If they had enough users clamoring for personal trainers, where someone knew they can make $75 an hour, I think people would start taking 3-month classes. And then on top of that, I mean, it's very easy to go and say, hey, everyone making minimum wage, if you want to be a personal trainer, we'll front you the money for your certificate, and then you can join our platform and you go through our verified training. And you can kind of create things when there's demand for users. And so if you start with the user in mind and collect them, then the supply side will fix itself like it always does.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with Andrew. In a lot of these marketplaces, you have to break the chicken and egg problem, as it's called, which comes first, right? Without enough supply, they won't be interesting for consumers, and without enough consumers, you'll have trouble getting the supply, right? Uber is a great example, as you guys said, because before they enter a certain country or a town, they typically go and just staff up the setup provider, in this case, drivers, right? So if they don't have enough drivers, there's no reason to open the app and actually, make a call to get a taxi or a taxi driver or Uber driver in this case. So you got to have enough supply. So supply in our sense also came first, just like Uber. When we decide to staff up a category, whether it's, strength training or mindfulness or meditation or yoga or whatever, we go and recruit enough providers in that area. We make them available on our platform. They're all live, and then then we go and solve the consumer side of the equation. And so scaling this will definitely be, as you guys have alluded to, it's a problem in that you have to be balanced about it. If as Andrew said, there are 1 million people who came onto the platform today, and we only have 250 providers, that's not going to be enough to satisfy the millions of people. And the product starts to look different if you're not able to join them in time. You definitely can't afford to have an oversupply of consumers, and you definitely can't afford to have an extreme oversupply of providers, because they'll all leave. Right? So you don't want to disenfranchise either of these. You really have to keep them both in balance. And so we've decided that we're going to keep a little bit of oversupply on the provider side and scale the consumer side accordingly.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, interesting things that are happening here, right? I mean, I don't know if it's comparable to Uber, but like the Uber, when they went into San Francisco, they actually created a bigger market, right? They, like there's people that are now driving for Uber that never intended to be like, taxi drivers, right? So they created a bigger market. And so their barrier of entry to be a driver is quite low because everybody can drive. So that's a skill that everyone has. Here, with TaskHuman or, like coaching, you actually have to have a skill. I don't know if you'd have a limited supply, but, if you have, let's say, 10 yoga providers vying for just a limited amount of users, I don't know, there'd be like a difficult problem there where how do you provide just good level of service, and you make sure everyone's happy, and all the providers are getting enough business to make it worthwhile for them to continue.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are really two things. I mean, obviously, every parallel, right? When we say Uber of this or Uber of that, the parallel only goes so far, but
Yeah.
it's still useful to illustrate the what's happening in the broader context. See, with Uber, everything is localized, right? The pool is not infinite as you think. The number of drivers that are willing to drive on a given day is still finite, right? And there's a finite set of people who want to operate in that city, and so it's actually far more finite than human capital that can be delivered without location. So if you look at the list of providers in a given town for Uber, potential pool of Uber drivers, that's actually pretty finite relative to, let's say we roped up all the yoga providers in the world. That's going to be millions, and they're all available to talk to you and do a yoga session one-on-one with you via the app, right? So either way, when it comes to a human being and connecting a human being to another human being, it is a finite set. So in the grand scheme of things, everything is finite. But at the end of the day, we don't have the Uber locality problem because we're not matching a consumer to a yoga provider in that area.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Right? We're really matching the consumer to any yoga provider anywhere in the world.
You can be one of the first to download our podcast and read our latest articles each week by subscribing to the Thoughtful Software newsletter. Sign up today and receive a free copy of Andrew's ebook, Thoughtful Software Principles. This is a treasure trove of software wisdom you won't find anywhere else. In this free resource, Andrew dives into details on how to build really great software. You can go to skiplist.com to subscribe and we'll immediately send you a download link. That's skiplist.com. Now, back to the show.
Let's talk about coaching and, one-on-one coaching. I think, Andrew, you're a big fan of this. How big can this industry become? Or, is it seems like it's trending to be more popular now with like video conferencing, and so you can do that anywhere. What do you see happening in this industry?
Yeah, I use Torch as an executive coaching service, and it's really good. I'm paired up with a great person out of Silicon Valley who has really great advice, and I recommend everyone doing it. It's well worth the cash to at least have someone there to listen and provide perspective, and that really helps. I think look at the Peloton S1. I mean, it's ridiculous how at-home services, remote services, if you will, are really picking up. And you can look at them. They have 100% renewal rate on their subscriptions. Now, if you're going to buy a $3,000 bike, you're probably going to pay the $40 a month service. But if you look at that and you look at the trend, executive coaching, wellness, all the things that are going on remote, I think are really going to be huge. And I think it's just, I live on a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. The amount of world-class services I get here are nearly zero outside of medical care at the Cleveland Clinic, but I don't have to do that anymore. I can get world-class service anywhere via my smartphone, via video chat and things like that can be offered with non-physical presence.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Andrew is saying. I mean, in fact, that's what this company is built on, is to make it easy so that regardless of where you are in the world, right, anybody with a smartphone, I think the smartphone penetration is about 2 billion people at this stage across the world. Everybody deserves access to world-class preventive healthcare by way of personalized one-on-one coaching, via TaskHuman, right? Via that one device that you have on your body with you all the time, right? Which is your cell phone. And so that's really how close it should be. That's going to transform the way that people think about preventive healthcare, the access to knowledge that they need to take care of their own health. And it's a fundamental, I would say wellness is a fundamental human right. Right, you have the right as an individual in this planet to be well, and we're going to give all the access to knowledge and the ability to take action based on your unique situation. Put it right in your pocket on that one device that you always have with you, and that's always been the aspiration for TaskHuman. And so, how big can it be was sort of your question. I think it's already big. I mean, remember, we didn't invent the field of one-on-one coaching, right? That's been happening without us for millennia, right? This is how knowledge has been passed around for millennia, is between person and person, and that's always the way it's been. Now we're just multiplying the ability to get those connections instantly. And that already today is a big market, right? Today, yoga is not, one-on-one yoga coaching is already happening, right? One-on-one Pilates instruction is already happening. One-on-one HIIT sessions, one-on-one mental health counseling. That's already happening, but it's all happening. A lot of it is happening offline. Some of it is happening online via apps and whatnot. And we're just trying to bring all this together and make it even more convenient and accessible and affordable through what TaskHuman is doing and its unique business model. And so I have no doubt that eventually, and hopefully by the time, 20 years from now, we're going to look back on this and go, yeah, I mean, we made it possible for 2 billion people. Like Facebook has 2 billion people on their platform. We want TaskHuman also in the hands of 2 billion people, and it's going to help dramatically with their wellness needs.
Bigger than that too is the access to data. The amount of sensors people have, if you have an Apple Watch, it's incredible. People can predict if you're going to have a heart attack or not. That's insanity, right? When you really think about, 10 years ago was when the iPhone was released. Maybe that's 15 years ago. I don't know. I'm bad with dates, but it's the amount of progress we've made makes it so easy for a doctor in California who specializes in a special type of health to see my data without me even stepping a foot into his office or her office and saying, hey, this is what's wrong with you. I'm going to write a prescription, have the prescription go over the internet to a pharmacy near me pick it up and never have to actually leave the town I'm in to get talked right to a specialist. And in the next 5 to 6 years, I can imagine just how much more prolific data is going to be. Beds track how you sleep. My watch tracks how I live during the day. It's a matter of time before it can do glucose levels, right? It's insanity. And this is going to continue the proliferation of maybe doctors don't even need to see you anymore unless you broke a bone, right? And then at that point you go in for surgery, but that's it. And the rest of it's done remotely at cheaper cost for everybody, but also at a bigger scale and a more affordable scale for people.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add to what Andrew is saying. One of my apps, and this is a shout out to my friends at Doctors on Demand. This is an app that you can download on your phone. They actually take your medical insurance. And I have 2 young kids, 11 and 9, and for those of us in your audience with kids, kids always tend to get sick 2 o'clock in the morning, right? It's really interesting how that's happened to all of us. And so when that happens, we usually just fire up the Doctor on Demand app. And the diagnosis most of the time can be done over the phone via video call, which they do, and then they send a prescription. It's 2:30 in the morning to the Walgreens near our house here, and if needed, I go and drive at 2 o'clock in the morning, pick up the prescription, and come back. Right. So that's how easy it should be, and that's how easy it is depending on where you live. Now, obviously, we're all in a bubble, so when I think about preventive healthcare, I think about remote corners and places and outside of the US or even within the US where this type of technology doesn't exist, because Silicon Valley is a bubble. But I mean, that ease of use, right? That ease of use, that access, that needs to be universal. And, in a way, TaskHuman is really building it to be wellness to be universally accessible. And all you need is just a smartphone. Right. So that's our goal, and that's sort of where we're headed. And it really just supports the point that Andrew made about how easy it should be. And you don't even need sensors and all of these tech hardware to enable this to happen.
You talk about Silicon Valley being a bubble real quick. I was talking to a friend of mine, super good guy, he's a construction worker. And he was like, Andrew, check this app out. I can get Chipotle delivered to my house. And we've known about Uber Eats and like DoorDash for probably 7 years now. But this guy, it was new and novel. And I was like, holy crap, you just figured out DoorDash exists. But that's how, like, when you think technology versus non-technology people, as you're like, oh, everyone should do this thing. People aren't using telemedicine. I think that's like a 3% population usage rate, even though most technology people say, oh, it's really cool. I can just pick it up, talk to my doctor, go to my Walgreens. In fact, Walgreens will deliver your stuff now too in some parts of the country to your house if you have the service. So it's even lazier if you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's the way, it needs to be. And so, we also constructed, if I could, just go back to a point that I never really fully addressed, Fahad, which is why did we create TaskHuman, right? I think I got into sort of what TaskHuman is, but not why we created TaskHuman. So let me do that now. For TaskHuman to exist, and we think each of these four reasons are going to be important in creating that applicability and getting in front of 2 billion people are, first one, revolutionary convenience via just a couple of taps on your mobile phone. You get connected to the number two point, which is you get connected to a live human being because they're best able to personalize your wellness plan for you. The third is it's supremely affordable. It's actually game-changingly and supremely affordable. And the fourth is the comprehensiveness that you get to be able to cover all of your personal and environmental needs. And so these four things are really what makes TaskHuman unique. And I'm just tying it back to what Andrew said, right? That notion of affordability needs to be there so that it isn't just meant for Silicon Valley, but it's really meant for all 2 billion people across the world.
Yeah, one thing I want to touch on, which I found fascinating, is we're really talking about a new way of searching for information. Like, Google made it really easy to just type something in a box and they spit back the internet, and then it's up to you to kind of sift through the documentation and read all what's available. Fast forwarding to 2019, there's just so much information, you can't really tell what's good or bad, or how quickly you can get access to the information that you need. And getting connected to someone quickly, through a video application, is something very interesting, because then what we're really talking about is personalized information. And when it comes to health and wellness, it's not one size fits all. Actually, everyone has a unique diet or a unique situation where they need personalized advice. So when you read like, hey, vegan is the next thing, I see this as like a true combination of like augmenting humans with AI, plus then also like personalizing it for that individual. And I think that's going to be the most powerful thing with this, is like me physically typing in, I want to do like yoga, for example. Actually, a great example is I hurt my knee recently dunking on somebody, and I busted it. And now then somebody's telling me, hey, look, you should go do yoga. And I type in yoga, and every single yoga exercise requires you to bend your knee. And now I'm like, okay, what do I do? There's nothing in there that's personalized for my situation when I only have one leg. And I find that to be the next level of how you actually augment all this information with a personalized experience. So I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. In fact, in creating TaskHuman, we had to invent a new kind of search engine, right? As you said, Google's done a phenomenal job of indexing all the world's written information. But that knowledge that's in your head, as a provider, right? That tribal knowledge that says, yeah, if there's a knee problem and my customer is telling me that he can't bend his knee, how do I help construct something that works for him, right? That's human knowledge that exists with a lot of personal trainers, because strength and conditioning coaches, as an example, they deal with athletes recovering from these types of injuries all the time, right? You're hardly the first guy to dunk and break something. Happens all the time. And so what if you could talk to the head strength and conditioning coach of the Oregon Ducks or the Sacramento Kings, or the New York Yankees strength and conditioning coach, or the University of Kansas strength and conditioning coach, right? Because they're dealing with athletes all the time. And by the way, those are all people you can find on TaskHuman. And so getting you that, as you said, Fahad, that personalized advice that Google can't, because Google's too generic, is really the future. And so to facilitate that, we had to invent a new kind of search engine, and boy, did we patent it, right? So we've patented quite a few of the things that we've done, because it is truly an unsolved problem. In many ways, I always thought that LinkedIn would have done this, because LinkedIn's collecting all this data about, like, I volunteer, you have, right? I'm sure Andrew has, Jessica has. We've all put our profiles on LinkedIn, but it's not really helping me as a consumer go and find people in my network that can do something, right? So in many ways, this problem of connecting you from your personal concern, which is rehab exercises for knee injury, that's sort of your concern, taking that phrase and then connecting you instantly to a provider who can help, that problem hadn't been solved before TaskHuman was invented. And so in solving that, we have created kind of a brand new search engine that takes you from your query to a live provider instantly.
Interesting. Let's wrap up and talk about trust and privacy. And maybe we'll get into what you see coming up. But one of the things I found just really fascinating with like Uber and Airbnb is how people just trust each other to jump into a stranger's car or use a stranger's house. I'm not a big fan of Airbnb. I don't think I'd do that, but Uber seems okay, and that has actually been very useful. But here with like health and wellness, there's also a lot of privacy and trust issues and things that we need to be aware of. So for a platform like this, how do you like inherently build trust into the system so that you can get the information you want, but you're also comfortable with the experience and outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, I think in any platform like ours, I mean, the key is to build a platform with a sound set of privacy principles. And so, we tell all of our consumers and providers in our, terms and conditions that the conversation is private. The business model is the consumer directly paying the provider. So we're not open. So we're more like Netflix in that sense than we are like Facebook, where it's not a free offering. And then in order to make money because it's a free offering, you're having to sell people's data. So it's really crafting a business model and growing from there with privacy and that respect for that one-on-one conversation, right? It's really meant to be one-on-one. And so by the nature of the platform we're building, because it's in wellness and because wellness we're really focusing on within that one-on-one conversations, we really feel that ultimately it's between the consumer and the provider to decide what to share. And and anybody that tries to take that information out of the network, I mean, it's going to get kicked out. And so it's just consistently against our terms and conditions.
And I mean, because it's interesting because like Andrew's super famous, right? And if he's searching for like CBD, the provider's like, oh shit, Andrew's looking for CBD. how do you prevent stuff like that? Because we don't want it on Twitter that Andrew's looking for brownies or something like that.
It's already on Twitter, man. How do you?
That's why the platform is it's really meant to be self-contained, and we don't really expose any of this information via advertising or to advertisers or any of that stuff. So it's really a completely different kind of mentality because the conversation between the consumer and the provider is private, and because that is the expectation that it is private, right? In Facebook, it's all about sharing and broadcasting to the world, right? And so it's a different kind of business model, whereas here, it's really the sanctity of the search and the one-on-one conversation. And so we've just completely decided as a company that, we're not going to make any of this public.
I think as a last kind of thought, and then we'll wrap up. What do you see that's interesting coming up? Not with TaskHuman, but just the industry that you're in and the market that you're kind of trying to serve. But anything interesting you see?
Yeah, no, something that Andrew alluded to earlier is really what I'm watching out for. I think to truly keep you healthy, right? You as in like could be plug any consumer in, right? All of us want to lead the best life we can live, right? We want to be our best version of ourselves. We want to be the healthiest person on the planet. I mean, this is our aspiration, and why not, right? Because that's the way it should be. Wellness should be a fundamental human right, as we discussed on the call. So in doing that, I'm just fascinated by all the approaches to preventive healthcare. I mean, once you're sick, you there's an entire system around helping you get back into the realm of being normal, called the medical network. But to me, the fascination is around preventive health. Like Andrew, I'm a big fan of tech in general. So all the gadgets, devices that are coming in, all the way from things 23andMe, right, where you can take a test and figure out some of your predispositions, to various diseases or just various items. There's a company called Everly, which is you take a test and then tells you all the different sensitivities you have to various foods, so that okay, well, that's why I'm not processing gluten, because that's part of the blood test that I just took, right? Maybe I should stay away from that, right? So it's the biological markers combined with sensors and other information that tells you, what to eat, what to do in general, and then combine that with you taking action, keeping yourself healthy relative to your own work schedule, other things you have going on in your family, as a mom or dad of kids, with aging parents, etc. All of that to how you can gracefully age, and then stay out of the medical network all throughout your life, right? So that whole preventive cycle is really exciting for me. I would say the thing that I'm really excited about is all these sensors and tests and other stuff that's coming out that gives you a better viewpoint of what your genetic makeup is. And so, I'm continuing to watch out for more and more stuff coming out in that area.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really excited about like personalized information, and as Andrew mentioned, collecting all this data and then getting something that's unique to me. So I think anybody who can figure that out, personalized, I think you guys are on the right track, which will be really, really interesting. What about you, Andrew?
I think there are a few things I'm excited about. I talked about the data. That's the first thing. I think at the end of the day, the amount of data we're getting about our health, about our habits, whether it's sleeping or exercise, is really going to open up a treasure trove for medical personnel and researchers to really understand human health. I think the access that we have to each other is greater than it's ever been, which is really awesome. I think, that's one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is what's the next phase, social media 2.0, right? We had the web 1.0, and then we had the web 2.0, and now we're in like web 3.0, whatever the hell that means. I think we're going to enter a phase of social media 2.0. And what does that look like? And I think it's actual human to human, face to face interaction, right? The rebirth of the community, because it's relevant right now. My Activision Blizzard stock is doing fantastic because Classic WoW came out around with a really amazing, astounding result, and so their stock skyrocketed because people still care about the IP. But I think what made that game great was the community around it. And it wasn't the actual gameplay. The gameplay is just terrible. But the people and the fact that you were forced to work together against common goals mattered. And I think the things like TaskHuman and video and all of that really is going to change the game on how social media works. Now, I don't think it's posting pictures. I don't think it's posts. I think people are tired of the fake shit, as it were, right? I think people want realness, and the only way to get realness is to get more personal. So I don't quite know the way it manifests. And if I did, I'd be out raising tons of money and building the next Facebook. But I do see how human interaction matters, and I think we are at a point where technology is so accessible, and we're accessible to each other. We can FaceTime each other, we can see each other, we're across the country. I think that's a big part of it. Those are two things I'm really excited about when it comes to this space and how it goes, because we're talking about marketplace, and social media is a marketplace for human interaction, I think. And how do we make that great again? That was a really bad phrasing. Delete the great again thing. Just I don't want to be associated with that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I don't want to get canceled.
Make social media great again. Or was it ever great? Well, that's pretty cool, man. And I think that's a good place to end. Ravi, thanks a lot, man. That was really cool to learn more about. You and I have talked for ages about TaskHuman, and I'm excited about what you're doing. I definitely think Andrew's last thought is really, really interesting to think about, a social component. So that seems really interesting. Thanks for listening. You can always connect with us at skiplist.com.